Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Owens. I'm going to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes with you. And I've got you all firmly in my grasp now. If I come across a little bit loopy, I can just warn you now that I had back surgery not long ago, and I'm testing the limits of hydrocodone and how much I can take to relieve the pain without really coming across as being a little bit. But seriously, that's the reason I'm sitting and standing and walking around. But I am delighted to be here. This is a great opportunity. And one of the things I do want to recognize is that, as we sit here today and there's a vocal group next door, I can't help but think about what this room is going to look like in just 3 to 5 years. And I'm going to talk about why what we're talking about here is going to take over most of what's happening in this entire pavilion. Because what's happening, it's not a trend, it's not a fad, and it's not going away. And if there's one thing I've heard since I've been here at PAC Expo, is I hear a lot of people talking about, quote, EPR. But the minute I ask a question, it's pretty obvious that it's very ambiguous. It's just an acronym. And when I ask, what does it mean for you and your company? They say, well, we got a report. And I said, okay, what else? And that's about as far as it goes. So my goal today is to show you how what I call practical sustainability can be implemented without adding cost by actively substituting products that are within what we call your transport packaging sector. So as we're here at PAC Expo, we think about packaging in 3 categories, right? We think about primary packaging, consumer packaging. We think about secondary packaging, which is what really gets shipped to the stores in the form of boxes, and then they debox, and then basically you have your transport packaging, which is your bulk. The challenge is we're staring into the abyss, which I call California, and SB 54, which is going to be going live, and which the portal's open now. And a lot of people are still unsure on what's going to happen and what it's going to mean. And I'm trying to get out in front to show that EPR doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be painful. And it can really be, I think, the propellant we need to make some real structural changes to how we conduct business. So I'm going to talk about reusable pallet wraps. And the company I've decided to really use as my reference, and I don't work for this company. I'm not even here getting paid by this company. I'm here because I am a consultant. I have an absolute passion, and you probably look at me and say, well, you're a late bloomer. But I am passionate about waste. I think, as I was talking to a couple of folks yesterday, I said, I've been trained my entire career. I worked for the big chemical companies in the past, like DuPont. And I've been trained to believe that waste is stupid. The dumbest thing that happens in a company is waste. Because waste means you're losing opportunity to bring revenue and value to the bottom line. And yet we accept waste every day in the facilities where we do business in. And so EPR, I think, gives us a chance not just to shift the paradigm, but to create a whole new one. And so I got to use Green Spider. Who is Green Spider? So Green Spider is the world's largest reusable pallet manufacturer wrap. They're based in China. They've been in business for more than a decade. Some of the largest companies you recognize, Walmart, Sam's Club, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, in other parts of the world are using their products every day. But we're late adopters here in the US. We don't do anything until we're ready to do it. And I think we got the motivation now to do it. Because as I'm going to show you, the cost of doing the same old is just not going to be possible. Or you're going to be willing to pay a lot more money to basically maintain the status quo. And there's a lot of people in this building, in both halls, that have a lot of capital exposure to the existing status quo. And I think that's, as I said, in the next 5 years, there's going to be some real disruption because companies are going to be forced to change. And so, I'm going to talk about Green Spider. I'm with a company called Recirculated. We're basically a different kind of consulting firm. We work with companies that are looking to shift from the linear focus of take, make, waste to go to basically go to fully circular. And most companies aren't ready to make that jump. It's a process. It's a gradual process. So what we do is we help them to map it out. What I do is I'll go into a facility and I will say to them, if you give me 4 hours of your time, let me talk to a few people at no cost to you. I will give you a point-in-time snapshot of where you are versus zero waste. I will give you an exposure to EPR based on what I see at a point in time and asking the questions I need to ask. First thing I do when I'm in a supply chain is I ask, where are your roll-off containers? Let me take a look at what's in them. Next question I ask is, how many times a week are you getting them picked up? And that right there gives me a tremendous amount of information to go on and say, okay, what's the opportunity here? And then I look at the materials they're using, and I can pretty much say, okay, based on the number of distribution centers, number of stores, whatever, your estimated EPR exposure is going to be in this area for secondary and transport packaging. I'm not going to be so aggressive and say I know what their primary packaging exposure is going to be because there's so much to it. But what we can do today is we can leave here with a better understanding of what are the things we can do to change today. And there's a few insights here. I mean, every day something's happening. I just got an email from CalRecycle saying they've updated the waste to landfill, what basically the profile is of the materials. That just came today. And then this morning, and if you stick around for the next presentation, which is all about EPR, I'll share with you what I found. I sent this to a lab for analysis because we were going to get it recycled. And what it came back with scared the crap out of me because what's in it is not what you would think. It's what's in it. And most mechanical recyclers would never be able to catch that because it's not what they're built to do. And so there's some really bad actors that I think we can address through this whole effort we call EPR. So there's three trends that are driving it. Three really consequential trends that are happening right now that you really should be thinking about. Number one, I'm not the only one in this room that's aging, okay? But the population is aging, the demographic is shifting. Labor scarcity, especially during COVID, drove the cost of labor in supply chains way up. And while people said, oh, it's just transitory, labor's not transitory as far as what you get paid. They don't say, oh, we're done with COVID, now your pay's going back down. And that's not very good, especially when you have 70% turnover in a lot of these supply chains. And so we're stuck with higher costs. We're stuck basically with what's happening in the DCs with the existing footprint. And everything in a supply chain is built around speed. It's built to get basically material in one door and out another to the stores, to the consumer. And so everything's been optimized for that. And so now we're saying to them, hey, we're going to blow this whole model up and you've got to rethink everything you're doing. And it's a big rethink because as any of us know that work with companies that have supply chains, which all of us do, those supply chains, they don't give you square footage. That's a premium. And so in order to get that additional square footage, there really needs to be a compelling business case. And so the second technology is, and this is the biggest thing that's driving to me. I don't know how many of you have heard about the word singularity. In the world of AI, singularity means it basically is the point at which AI basically surpasses human intelligence. And if you listen to the prognosticators, and they say it could happen within a year, and some say 5 years, and some say never. Elon Musk is saying it'll probably be within 12 months. And the reason that matters in this room is because once AI reaches that point, then all those robotics and all the promises of robotics get married with that now basically singularity of AI capability. And now these robotics can go in and pick orders and do everything you need to do in a supply chain with no waste. I mean, they truly can do it. And why that's relevant to all of us in this room is, if you ever deal with pallets, if it goes automation, like Amazon's doing and others, they don't want to have a manual process for the back dock operations. They don't want to be dealing with waste. They don't want to be dealing with basically byproducts. So everything's going to be reusable. And the question is not if, it's when. And from where I stand, and I've done research now for 2 years because I've been almost nerding out on this EPR because there's so much that's happening in there and it's such a huge disruptor that if all you know is EPR, you don't know anything beyond that, you got a lot to learn because what's required in the way we do business and the way we track what we generate in waste is going to change everything overnight. And then the last thing is these states are driving EPR. And each state has a little bit different twists on EPR. So Oregon's already live. Most of us haven't really felt it because Oregon's not a huge state. Colorado goes live in January, then California follows on, and you've got several other states, and you've got a lot of states that are various stages of studies all the way through to looking at EPR. And once they start seeing producers paying the state to manage this, I don't care if you're red state or blue state, you're going to see this thing take off. And so my challenge to you is this. Don't think about, oh, I live in New England and we don't have EPR yet, or I live in Tennessee and they've decided to wait. If you're a national company and your customer is a national company and they're doing business in any of these states that have EPR, it's completely unproductive for them to have separate standard operating procedures for states that have EPR versus states that don't. And so those requirements and expectations will be for all of us. So it's the single best news that this group we call the Reusable Packaging Association could ever have received. Because I don't care if you're in the box side or if you're in the plastic side, everything's going to be tracked. I'm going to move a little faster. I wanted to get this preamble out because I really feel passionate about, if you haven't thought about this in the context of a strategic competitive advantage rather than a cost, then you're missing an opportunity. These reusable pallet wraps within 5 years could be $1 billion business here in the US, easily. It's a $6 billion industry for stretch film. I think stretch film is a fantastic product. But guess what? If you're selling stretch film now to your customer and your customer's recycling it and they're getting 8 cents a pound, maybe at a B grade, they're now being charged through EPR, we'll say 70 cents a pound. And then all of a sudden your stretch film costs, you're generating 100,000 pounds of stretch film a year in California, and you're paying, say, $1 million, so we'll just say $1 a pound. And now your fee for that tiny little part of what you do over on packaging is $700,000. Additional, you're going to get a bill as part of your EPR fee from California for $700,000. Oh, and by the way, they don't want you to keep using it. They want you to start finding alternatives. So we've got to be able to do that. So that's what makes it exciting. Now this chart I have here, and I'll go a little quicker, just shows what's happening in the last 5 years. During COVID, prices for all the unit load packaging went up by double. And if you look at the next 5 years, they're forecasting that will continue to escalate. I didn't build anything in here for EPR. I didn't even try to say EPR is going to have. That's because I don't know which states are going to be in line and how much we're going to learn as we go. But you can see what the trend line is. It's not favorable. And if you're thinking about automation, you don't want to be looking at 6, 7, 8, 10 different materials that go into your unit load packaging. You want to get down to 1 or 2 or 3. So this is where we're going. And so if you're thinking about the status quo and walking around here and saying, yeah, I'll be here next year, it's going to look a little different. 2 years from now, it's going to look a lot different. So this chart just shows some of the costs associated with EPR. And I only want to hit a few of these because for your pallet wrap, if you wanted to go to a reusable pallet wrap, you don't have to deal with much of this stuff. So the first thing I would say is, okay, you recycle your pallet wrap. Oh, my customer recycles, they're good, they're recyclable. No, they're not. They still need to track it. And so now the law says, you need to make sure that you have data, and all of your vendors that you have contracts with, they got to update their contracts. In their contracts, they must have language that says you need to be agreeable to being audited. And for a period of 3 to 5 years, it just depends on the state. So their books are required to be open so that a third party can come in and make certain that they're not cheating on what's being recycled. That's number one. So now your contractors are going to be asked to do more. Second thing is, if you're like one of most of us and say out of sight, out of mind on your recycling, now you've got to ask yourself, is my recycling channel that I'm using a responsible end market? If you're in California, and I know in California there's no waste to energy, but if you're in a state that has waste to energy, it's not likely to ever be considered a responsible end market. Okay, and so now if you were doing that, you're in violation. And in California, they're debating the merits of chemical recycling right now because there's some people that say chemical recycling is critical to hard to recycle plastics, and others are saying, oh no, we can't have it. But mechanical recycling can only do so much. And so that's going to be part of it. So you need to you need to be able to ask your customer, are we sending it to a responsible end market? Easy enough. Okay, we have validation, we have contracts for data tracking. All the handoffs now need to be certified. So you need to have almost a blockchain-like handoff process. And now here's the kicker. So now let's say your customer tells you, and let's say it's an 800-pound gorilla in the room. I'll use Walmart as an example. Walmart's not my client, so I'm not taking any stretches. Walmart's accustomed to telling its suppliers what to do. And so Walmart now is saying, hey, I've got all this plastic to be recycled, and they do a really good job actually on trying to keep it clean. And Walmart thinks, hey, I've got 90% pure stuff. And you take it to your recycler and they start opening up the bales and they say, you know what? Only 60% of what I received is recyclable. What you have to do now is you need to basically get that sign off at that end transition place where it's supposed to be diverted from landfill to say what was your net recycling. And so all of us that are accustomed to the word gross recycle, how we recycle, it doesn't matter anymore. If it's plastic, if it's paper, whatever it is, you need to have documentation that says, what is your net recycling? And if in the case of Walmart, and you're this humble vendor, you got to go back to Bentonville and say, excuse me, but there's 30% of the recycling last month, which equated to 16 million pounds that wasn't recycled. And so somewhere up the chain in Bentonville, some CFO or finance person is going to write a check for that 16 million pounds times 70 cents a pound because it wasn't recycled. That's how the game has changed. That's why I'm so passionate about telling people that it's not enough to say, oh, I understand EPR. You need to get down into the details, because if you're making boxes, guess what? It's $60 a ton for boxes is a fee. Okay, so if the secondary market's only paying you 48 and your customer's paying $60 a ton because it's part of the EPR program, it's no longer a profit center. Okay, and we can argue all day long about boxes being green or whatever. But if you're in the reusables and you're doing containers and you're like, man, I want to see how does this help me as Orbis or any of the other reusables out there, I would be asking the question, what are the indirect costs that I just went through for all that tracking, for all those boxes that needs to be done? What are the indirect costs for all that plastic? Start putting together your own algorithm, write your own AI agent, and let your customers see what they're really paying. That's a phenomenal selling opportunity for you on the reusable side. I mean, never has anything happened to make selling reusables easier than it should be now. And so I'm supposed to be here talking about reusable pallet wraps, right? So let's talk about it. So Green Spider has 3 offerings that I'm going to talk about today that they got much more. The world's largest, like I said, they're in all these brands. This one they have there they call Model T. Just like Ford's Model T, it was basically ubiquitous when it came onto the market. This product is durable. If you come by the booth, you'll have a chance to see how well it's made. The owner's sitting here in the front row. He's one of those guys that never stops tinkering. And he's created a product that is incredibly resilient, that'll hold up. And I'm going to show you on pricing, just as a midpoint. I know I'm not allowed to talk about price, so I'm going to give you a midpoint of what a pallet wrap would be for this kind of service at certain levels. You know, give you an idea. But this Model T has been out for several years. You can put it on and take it off in under a minute. This is what it looks like when it's folded up. Weighs very little, can be washed, can be repaired. And in the US, there are no companies currently really aggressively going after and selling it. It's just Jessie, who's one of the owners, that's doing her best. But if I gave you some of the names of the companies that are testing it right now, I think your mouth would be salivating with the opportunity to get into some of these customers. Your customers are looking at these things. And so this pallet wrap, the Model T, is their workhorse. I did some analysis, and this is a little bit detailed, and I'd be glad to share it with you over at the booth. But your net return, if you bought 10,000 pallets, you're paying for that in several months. And if you just took the fees alone, you know, I have one client that I work with in consulting in California that's a grocery retailer. They generate 2 million pounds of stretch film a year from their stores in California. 2 million pounds is 70 cents a pound. You know how many pallet wraps you can buy for $1.4 million? Setting aside the 2 million they're spending already for the stretch film, they can replace everything they're doing in California without having to spend more money. This is part of the education that needs to happen. And we need to do it now because this is one of those easy changes for customers. I am not going to sit here and tell you, I think stretch film is a phenomenal product. But like everything, there's a time for it and there's a time for change. The time for change to go to reusable pallet wraps is now. And if you can be an early adopter, or if you're a distributor and you want to start talking about it, learn more about it, come on by. Because you can sell this stuff in your sleep. It's that competitively priced with what's currently going on out there. And when California companies start getting their invoices, in addition to Colorado's invoices, in addition to Oregon's invoices, and Washington State, and all the others, they're not going to need a whole lot of convincing. It's just going to be show me the numbers. So this is your cumulative cost over time. What I'm showing you here in the blue chart is basically you have a one-time capital cost if you buy them up front. If you don't want to buy them, we know the model in the reusable space with pool programs. We can rent these for pennies a day. Pennies a day, okay? Get them back, clean them, and rent them. You talk about an annuity, this is a phenomenal annuity. In Europe, where Sam's and others are using a Procter & Gamble, I know Sylvia worked for Procter & Gamble, they've been using it for more than 10 years. They get over 500 uses. They've reached 1,000 with a couple of customers in Mexico. So you get 500 uses of anything, the math gets real easy. And even if you half that and you still do the numbers, the math is really attractive. This is the Model H. I've just got a few more slides. Model H is basically for your privacy wrap. And people say, yeah, that's great. I'll tell you what, if I'm in California and part of my mandate is to reduce the amount of plastic I'm using by dates certain in the future, which is what California law is going to mandate, and I'm losing half of my total shrink and theft that's happening in the supply chain, making a few changes with your pallet wrap covers, covering up your high value goods, and putting the data trackers in there like RFID tracking technology, which we can sew into the unit, you now have added protection. And you can actually reduce the amount of plastic you're using just by virtue of saving you the loss of the materials that are not making it to your customer. So these are more no-brainer opportunities. Half of the loss is at the pre-consumer level. That's pretty amazing. And this is the Model H. This basically is just a corner guard with straps. It's made of a lightweight metal, aluminum. It will replace this, which is your corner guard. If you've ever been in a distribution center, and if you've ever had to deal with any of these, I've had many a distribution center manager and a VP of sustainability say, this is the bane of our existence. We hate these things, but they protect the product on the corners. Tens of millions of these get used just in California. They're made from trash plastic. You never know what's in it. And so, as I said, I had it sent off to be evaluated, and I got the report back this morning, and I thought, wow, this is timely since I'm going to be on an EPR discussion right after this one. And I said, well, I'll wait till then to share it, because if it's not a call to action, I don't know what will be, because there's liability now that I'm finding. And not just this, but the other half of that terrible problem is flower pots. If you work in supply chain, every single order of flowers comes into it with a secondary receptacle container that keeps it from leaking and keeps the dirt from getting out. And it's made of, again, what we call garbage plastic. Some of it's polypropylene, some of it's got HDPE, and then it has a bunch of filler materials and carbon black. So I thought, and I even looked at a few that I have that show number 5 recycle and polypropylene on the bottom. And so I sent it off to a chemical recycler to do some analysis because they were interested. I asked them, I said, can you do anything with these materials? Because they're going to landfill today. And I'm talking about hundreds of millions of these things. And so low-hanging fruit, this should not be happening. And again, if you do stick around, I'll tell you what's in it, and you'll kind of be surprised. And so these are the opportunities with the pallet wrap. And finally, I'm going to close and have Jessie come up and just talk a few words about the company. I will say this, we're a long way from having the final product. But if you have a need to wrap anything, to protect anything, this is the company you want to work with. They don't skimp on corners. They do high quality. We're working on an LCA so I can get the absolute carbon emissions so we can do the carbon offsets to make sure that the carbon offsets are what I think is as significant as they're looking to be. And we can recycle the pallet wraps. And we're using recycled material. So before I have Jessie come up, I want to show you something that's kind of cool. A lot of really interesting sustainability work is happening in Asia, a lot. Looks like my iPad, right? And you know, there's a lot of cool containers here at RPA. So I'm not trying to say it's not. But Tony, who's the owner of the company, brought this over last year and said, you know, I have a friend who designed this and invented it for the Chinese Postal Service. He said, because they're trying to, again, China's doing a lot of really great things when it comes to trying to be more sustainable. And the mind and the firepower that's going at it with some of these people, amazing intellectual firepower put in. This guy developed this, he took all the weight out of it, so he made it lightweight. It's not final form yet. And he said, I want something that's collapsible, that you can put up and put together. In about 5 seconds, that you can stand on, but with my back, I'm not going to do anything dumb. Holds over 300 pounds, and it has a little locking mechanism. You say, okay, this little locking mechanism, you put a little insert in here. And when you put the insert in there, it cannot be opened unless you break the insert, okay? And so you could cover that with tape, ship it, and if you receive it as a consumer, let's say it's a medical product, like prescription, online order, if you know that's been opened and you know it's been basically molested, you don't want it. But the whole idea was, you get it, you receive it, you open it up, collapse it, put it out in your mailbox, and now it can be used thousands of times. This is 100% recycled. This is all recycled plastic. Over the next couple of years, the CAA is going to be challenged constantly with how are we going to reduce the amount of plastic we're using? Part of that solution is we've got to figure out new end markets with new products for these things. So whether it's pallet wraps or these kind of containers, these are, again, for the right entrepreneur, there's an opportunity here that's just gigantic. And there's a lot of point-to-point that takes place. We can scale this to different sizes. And like I said, we can repair it, and it's incredibly resilient. So I'm going to close with that. I appreciate your time. I'm going to have Jessie come up and just say 2-3 words, and we will actually be on time.
Thank you so much. So my name is Jessie. I'm the co-founder of the Green Spider Pallet Wraps. First, thank you so much, Patrick, for the amazing speech. So I also thank you all your time here, and I hope you learn a lot from the Patrick's speech. So I just let you know, so it's time for game change. I introduced a little bit more about our company. So our company is based in Houston, Texas, but our manufacturing is located in China. So this time, my partner and the owner of the manufacturing, Tony, is also here. Yeah, he's from China. So you see, all our products are well designed. It's all from Tony, and he's a very creative guy. And our mission is to help our company to save money and protect the environment, and have the better future together. So your requirement, just let me know, and we will provide you the best solution and give you the best price and the best service. So trust us. Okay, so thank you so much.